Welcome to 1850 Main Street, a place where friends get together and talk about their country and hope for a brighter future. Today, Rob Walgate and Alan C. Duncan from the Public Square are joined by David Zanotti, the CEO of the American Policy Roundtable.
Is it possible these days for two candidates who disagree on several key issues to have a debate and not explode? After watching the Vance-Walz debate, apparently the answer is yes.
So we're a couple days past the vice presidential debate. At least we know one thing. The stats are showing that over 40 million people watched, which is interesting because 62 million, I think, watched the presidential debate. So does that surprise you that 40 million? I mean, I heard that Fox had 10 million of the 40. I thought, well, if Fox has got 10, maybe 20 million watched, but 40 plus million people watched that. Of course, I'd love to know for how long they watch any of these debates. But so first question is, what do you think about the viewer response, the viewership?
The number surprised me. It was higher than I thought it would be.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was folks, though, that wanted to tune in because Tim Walz and J.D. Vance are two relative unknowns to people across the country. Despite J.D. Vance being in the exclusive club of 100, still many people don't know them. What they know of him, they've probably heard from someone else on another campaign.
That's funny to me because this J.D. Vance is somebody who has a New York Times bestseller. Like, I couldn't walk into a bookstore without seeing Hillbilly Elegy for years. And then this is someone who Ron Howard has made a biopic about his life starring Amy Adams and Glenn Close. Like he shouldn't be a surprise to people.
Well, I think is maybe not the name, but his political views.
Sure.
Or what he represents.
Yeah. Well, I do think you could have got some of that from the book, but
I forget in the movie who played the role of J.D. Vance in the film.
You know, I don't remember. Let me take a look while you guys continue to chat.
It was eerily similar, though, how J.D. Vance's Mama and Glenn, I think that's what he called her, right? Mama and Glenn Close looked when you looked at pictures of her and pictures. I was like, wow, that's impressive.
Good casting.
Yes.
Or makeup, hair and makeup.
So maybe people didn't know J.D. Vance because they'd never seen the real J.D. Vance.
Yeah, and I mean, Hillbilly Elegy as well. I mean, reading the book, if you read the book or did watch the movie, obviously the name would have rung a bell, but it was a few years ago.
Yeah, it's been a little while. Gabriel Basso, I think.
I guess the frustrating part for me in politics is even if you disagree with everything that J.D. Vance stands for, can't we sit back and applaud and say that's the American dream, or that's one level of the American dream? Someone who grows up in poverty, someone that's raised by a grandparent, mother struggling with addiction, goes and serves in the service, graduates from Yale Law School. I mean, all of these things, even if you don't like his policies, sit back, clap, and appreciate what the man has done.
Well, I think what's interesting about that is, and it doesn't matter whether the person is white or black or Asian or Hispanic, if they're not liberal, if they don't fit into the Hollywood mold, if they're not a part of the cult of the cool kids, it doesn't matter what they've accomplished. It really doesn't. They're not celebrated. And it seems harsh. But I'm going through names in my mind of people across different socioeconomic strata and different nations of origin and different skin color. And I'm thinking about the fact that they've never been, at least in the modern era, they're not appreciated. They're not respected because ultimately they're not a part of the cult of the cool kids. They're not liberal enough.
Well, and that's the thing. For a while, it was kind of, now, Trump is his own brand of, off-putting for many people, which I understand. He can be abrasive to people. He's kind of bull in a china shop.
I think abrasive.
I don't like the. I know I don't like the B word. I don't, but that word fits perfectly. Trump is his own brand.
It's kind of his thing, and so people would say, oh, we just need a more moderate voice. It's maybe not even all his policies, but the way he says it, the way he comes off. Well, J.D. Vance gave you that during the debate. He gave you a more reasoned, calm, moderated approach to communication, and the left still doesn't like it.
Well, getting back to the debate, I do want to say I would have loved to have been sitting with both of you during the opening shot because they missed the handshake. the cameras missed the handshake in the beginning. They caught the tail end of it. And I'm like, can you imagine the screaming in the truck or the producer's room? Like, how do you miss there was so much made of the Donald Trump, Kamala Harris handshake and or the lack of handshake between Biden and Trump. I was like, oh my goodness, they just missed it. Someone's getting screamed at right now.
Yeah.
But let me back up the tape though for a second, because Alan, you made a very important point there. And I wanted to press in on that just a little bit more. Prior to the debate, which is sort of I guess the convention would have been the coming out moment for both these candidates. But this was the first national debate for both these men. So there's kind of another form of either reintroduction or new introduction, whatever it might be. But prior to the debate, and even right after the convention, after the choice was announced of J.D. Vance, the mainstream press, and I'm talking, again, the corporate moguls that run the processes, and I know people have got to be tired of hearing this, but I don't know that you can say it any other way and be honest. You've got the conglomerate of the national corporate media, and they had decided that J.D. Vance, with the help of Tim Walz, was going to be defined as weird. And so they did everything in their power to make him so. They basically treated him like he was a picture on a coloring book, and they could put whatever colors on him and color inside the lines or outside the lines, do whatever they wanted. They portrayed him as monstrous. It went from weird, basically, to monstrous. And so that was what he walked into the room with. This is the monster. Now, my thought is it wouldn't have mattered whether it was J.D. Vance or Sarah Huckabee Sanders, or whether it was Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz or Glenn Youngkin or any number of Republicans who Donald Trump may have picked. The same thing would have been done to them. They would have been weirded out.
They would have been. I mean, you think back to 2016, 2015, even when they had the pre-debates, and I think of Dr. Ben Carson being on the stage. Like, they had a literal brain surgeon on, like a literal. This isn't brain surgery. Well,
Who came up from nothing. The perfect American. I mean, amazing.
I mean,
American
you read his
story.
biography. It's amazing. You're like, wow, that should be celebrated. But they found ways to vilify him as well. So that's part of the takeout team, is what I call them, of being in the media.
Well, and that's why I think part of this, we should only be concerned. This is something I think about all the time. You know, we're in communication. I think we should only be concerned with trying to communicate to people who are interested in actually listening. If someone is, no matter what you say, whether they say it kind, whether you speak the truth in love, if they don't have ears to hear and they don't want to hear what you say, what am I supposed to do at that point? All we can do is try to be as above reproach as we possibly can be, and then speak the truth in love and let the chips fall where they may. You can't reach someone who doesn't want to be reached.
You know what's hard about that too, Alan, is that what you just said, I think, is as true as, well, I think it actually reflects both the teachings of the ancient Hebrew proverbs, as well as the teachings of Christ and his life experiences here on earth in his interactions with people. Now, he had a distinct advantage because he knew what was coming at him at all times. He didn't get surprised, if you will, with a false expectation of someone. We don't have that power, obviously. So we have to watch our expectations. But what's difficult about this is to look at the flip side of it. Take a look at what the same corporate media has done with Tim Walz. What's the momentum? The momentum towards Vance was weird him out. That's the goal. The momentum to Walz was make him likable.
Football coach. And they didn't even give the accurate information when it comes to where he coached and what he coached and what his role was. They wanted to make him relate, because everybody who's been through school can relate to the high school football coach. Whether you played football or you didn't play football, you knew who the high school football coach was.
And if I'm misunderstanding that, I think those are two very stark realities about what has been going on in regards to trying to influence people's thinking. So that pregame setup, if you will, the pregame hype, which brought people into believing who the combatants or opponents were going to be, was largely blown up because those two gentlemen, to their credit, operated outside of those boundaries. I think they both should be tremendously applauded
Agreed. There
for
was
trying to be as real as they know how to be. Now again, they may have been play acting. They may have been, and maybe real is not the right term because we've been in enough debates to know you're holding yourself into a task.
I thought that they were just trying to be respectful of one another, as they were making an effort to be respectful.
And I think afterwards you saw that as well when their wives were on stage and they talked with each other's wives, probably maybe being introduced for the first time.
Yeah.
Who knows? But they appeared to engage with one another.
iVoters.com changes everything about the way we process elections. Instead of negative TV and radio ads and biased opinions from editorial boards, now people in all 50 states can get the facts about candidates and ballot issues from a nonpartisan, independent source. iVoters is fast, free, secure, and powerful. With iVoters, you can vote with confidence and encourage others to do the same. Free minds, free speech, free agents. iVoters.com, a public service of the American Policy Roundtable.
And you know what, Ellen? I would add to respectful. There was a sense of shared humanity. They were maybe that's another term for respect, but they were trying to be aware, and so it was a debate at a different level, which makes me think that there wasn't a giant turnoff factor because people couldn't take anymore. I'm telling you right now, I watch presidential debates. I have to watch them and turn them off and watch them and turn them off and watch them and turn them off because they make me crazy. I mean, I do watch them, but I have to like. I've got to, sometimes I got to take a 30-second break because my brain's about to explode.
Well, we know that feeling. I do think it would have been interesting because I feel like J.D. Vance was very strong on policy and was much deeper on policy than Tim Walz. Selfishly, I would have loved to have seen J.D. Vance debate Josh Shapiro because I think that would have been two heavyweights on policy.
I would have loved to have seen him debate Kamala Harris, but that ship has sailed.
Yeah, I don't.
But yes, that would have been interesting.
That wouldn't have been the same heavyweight fight on policy that I was looking for.
No, it'd be very different event. But yes, to the shared humanity piece, there were a couple of nice moments of that. Tim Walz, they both kind of try to reach across and say, "Hey, we this is where we differ, but we agree on some of these general things." Whether that's true or not is up for debate, but they at least tried to do that. And then there was the mention of Tim Walz said his son had witnessed a shooting, and JD said, "Hey, I didn't know that. I'm sorry to hear that about him." And there was a couple of nice little moments like that.
But I think that also relates to the American people because that's how we are with our neighbors. We don't agree on each and everything with our neighbors. And people talk about the Supreme Court and how divisive it is. Take a look at some Supreme Court opinions and how much they agree, even though they don't agree on what day of the week it is, maybe, but they agree on the law. They agree on Supreme Court decisions. They agree on what the lower courts say, or they dissent from that. But there's a lot of times it's a lot more than 5-4.
What do you guys think of the moderators?
Well, the word that came to my mind immediately within the first 10 seconds was plastic. And then the second word was robotic. And I felt that once again, we're in a position in our country where we do not have formulas for appropriate debates. We went through from the Presidential Commission, which turned into absurdity. And then Donald Trump broke that mold. He said he would not participate again in a debate that involved the National Presidential Debate Commission, which had been around for years, and basically put them out of business because he said, I'm not going to play this stupid game anymore. To his great commendation, because all the rest of us were applauding. And I think the Democrats were applauding just as loud. So then we went to the networks, and the networks proved that they can't behave themselves either. They cannot get out of their own way and consider the common good of the public more important than their agenda. They can't do it. I don't think Fox can do it either. I don't think there's anyone in the news media, and to quote our friend Michael Del Giorno, who I know he didn't probably coin the phrase, but I think he probably owns it now, is we're talking about the death of journalism. When journalism is dead, you can't moderate a debate because it's just too much about you and about your agenda. So I don't know what we do going forward. I really don't know what we do.
Well, one of my issues, and this may not be popular, but so be it, is they had two women as the moderators. Fine, all good. The problem becomes is when we talk about equality and treated the same, J.D. Vance, when he did a correction, when they tried to fact check him, and he started explaining the legal process of what really happens in Congress, some of the write-ups were, oh yeah, another example of men talking over women and like bringing,
I hadn't seen that.
And I'm like, wait a minute here, hang on. You want to play at that level, then you should be treated the same at that level. They wouldn't have said anything had that been a man that was moderating, that he was explaining that to. But since it was a woman, he was supposed to treat it differently. And
he was very respectful. I don't think that was disrespectful.
He was extreme. He did much better than I would have done at being respectful. I can say that. He just wanted the truth to be out there. But they took issuance with him. You know, the term that was used is he was mansplaining. He wasn't.
He's the person you're asking the questions to. So, I mean, he's going to explain the answers. I mean, that's kind of how a debate works.
Catch, Alan. Yeah. Now that you come to think of it, dang.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. So there is a lot more to talk about in regards to these debates. And I want to particularly get to the question of abortion and some of the issue questions that came up. And I think we're going to have to carry this conversation forward to be able to do that. But the general conduct of the debate, I thought was a surprise to everyone. And I think it actually makes it worth watching. And I have heard more than a number of listeners to both your morning show and to the Public Square say, I was drawn in. I thought I could take 5 minutes of it, but I kept watching. And the longer it went, the more I was riveted, because I wanted to know, well, when are all their heads going to blow off? I mean, where's the blood on the floor? I mean, people were watching through the very end to see when they came up on stage what would happen, because it's such a novel idea that people could be kind.
It did feel like a quick 90 minutes to me.
Well, it was actually more than 90 minutes. What? Yeah,
it went over.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
saying, that's how fast it felt. Yeah.
Yeah. How do they get an extra 15 minutes? I mean, what the heck?
And I didn't want to watch this at all. I did not want to watch it at all.
No, me neither.
Yeah. And I was pleasantly surprised. And I do think J.D. Vance has a very bright political future.
Yeah, that'll yet to be seen. And as much as now, to be fair, Tim Walz had some whoppers that have not been fact-checked and discussed across any media. And we got to get to that, because it's just, now we're talking policy. I get let's get one of them out of the way now. We'll keep the conversation going on. The thing about China. Okay, look, he wasn't in China. Not only, and of course, you have to ask yourself, do you think CBS would have dared challenge him had it not been Minnesota Public Radio that had broke the story that he wasn't in China at Tiananmen Square or during the time at Tiananmen Square? If it had been like the Free Beacon or the New York Post, do you think that CBS would have brought? I don't think there's a chance.
But they did. I got to give them credit. They actually did. They didn't ignore it. They brought it up, and he kind of fumbled over it. I mean,
he's a knucklehead. What can he say? He's a knucklehead.
Aren't we all?
Let's consider, though, how he went. He went with the trained response. He's done this before. Every time he gets caught in a situation where he did not tell the whole truth, whether it was intentional or not, I'm not judging the man. It's just not factual. It's not a truthful statement. He goes back to, people know me, they know my record, and he goes and he does like about 2 minutes of all of the things that he's done and all the people that endorse him and all the people that believe in him. And after putting all that up, then he says, and in such and such, and maybe he'll say, I misspoke, and da. Look, really, I mean, how boring is that? I mean, why not just start off with, I'm a knucklehead? That had some value. Why not just say, you know what? I was wrong. I spoke quickly. I mean, there's so many ways to handle that. And what I thought was interesting was that when J.D. Vance was then given okay, well, he was a knucklehead, but what about you? What about you said about Donald Trump? I thought what Vance was interesting. He said, I was wrong. I didn't know what I was talking about. I thought one thing. I had believed narratives that I should have tested, and I changed my mind.
Yeah, I believed the media. That was pretty. That was pretty.
I fell into the trap. I was wrong.
Yeah.
That was interesting and a compelling difference. All right, we got to keep this going, but we need more coffee.
This conversation isn't over yet, so come on back next time and pull up a chair at 1850 Main Street. To help spread the word, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more, visit 1850mainstreet.com. We'll see you soon.